Casting with Kerry Jones.
Hi guys, and welcome to this week's podcast. And I want to start by thanking and welcoming my new patrons who joined this week. And I really appreciate the support of the channel. Lots more planned as well for the next couple of weeks. And those who haven't joined yet, please consider becoming a Patreon. We'll get access to over 90 past episodes and weekly podcasts, bonus content, photographs behind the scenes to each episode, and other exclusive content and competitions each month. Before I go on to this week's guest, I just want to say I will be in Ireland now fishing for the Ferox throughout September. Even though I've got some bookings lined up for the Ferox days, I have a few dates available. If anybody wants to join me and experience an outstanding fishing for these amazing specimen fish, give us a shout. Now on to this week's episode. This week's guest is a gillie and a boatman, Lough Melvin, County Leitrim, and also on Lough Arrow in County Sligo. It soon becomes apparent when you listen to our chat. He's not Irish, but originally comes from South Africa. He moved over to nearby Lough Melvin, coming up to 20 years now. I first met up with him for a day a few years ago and had a great time, especially his lunches actually. Something he's renowned for. He gives advice and tips on how to fish the lakes this coming month, September, and also talks of the Sonaghan and Gillaroo. And I hope to meet up with him next month and hopefully have a couple of days and maybe even try for the Ferox. Welcome to my chat with Andries Ferreira. Well, it's good that we finally got a chat, because the last time we'd arranged to do something, you actually caught COVID back in May or June, was it?
That's correct. Just after Mayfly, I got COVID and the whole house had it, but I'm fine now.
Was it quite ill with it?
I was just knackered, that was all. Just very, very tired.
Oh, well, at least that's over with now. And we were, I'm over next month, and I thought it'd be easier to do maybe a chat next month when I come over, but I thought, well, you never know what might happen, so we might as well do it on the phone now.
Exactly.
So how was your season been?
Hit and miss, Kerry. It's been all over the show. The fishing's not been great in Ireland this year. The West Coast has been pretty quiet. The Mayfly on Lough Erne was terrible. There was a good hatch on Lough Melvin. Evening fishing was better. And then Lough Arrow fished very well for me. Mask was hit and miss as well.
Oh, you fish Arrow as well, do you?
I do. I guide on Arrow as well.
Oh,
I enjoy Arrow.
Yeah. Do you know what? I fished it once, many years ago. And one thing I do remember, I only went out for a few hours in the evening and I had a few small fish. But there was it a pub right beside the lake, if I remember right? Just literally walking distance from the lake.
I know where you are. It's on a corner of the road. I know exactly where you are. It used to be a great pub to go in the evenings, chat to the fishermen.
That's what we did. Yeah. And one thing I do remember, it was probably one of the best pints I've ever had over there. The head on the top was like pastry. It was like about an inch and a half floating on top of the pint.
Aye. You need to come to Garrison. We have a very good pub called Gilroy's, and it always has a great pint in it.
Gilroy's.
Mickey's won a couple of Gilroy's. Mickey's won a couple of awards from the Guinness Best Pint.
Has he?
I tell you one thing. There's a fine pint in that place. When you put the glass down, the cream is stuck to the side of it.
That's nice. Well, I'll have to make a point of putting it on my list when I come over in September.
Definitely. September fish as well too.
What can I expect in September? What sort of fishing? I mean, like, are they on the top, or are they pulling wets or dries? Or
in September on Melbourne, most of the fish are still in the deep, so water temperature would be fairly high still. So there's a big bloom of Daphnia coming towards August into September, and it can be very good pulling in the deeps on the clarets and on the golden olive colors. Octopus and that sort of stuff will work well. And then also very dark clarets, claret dabblers, that type of thing.
All right, yeah. When you say in the deeps, then would that be for the Sonaghan, or you would get normal brown
mostly
trouts?
For the Sonaghan, all the way.
Yeah.
There are good browns in it, and some really big feroxes, but they're hard to come by. The feroxes we catch most early in the season.
Yeah.
Sort of March, April, that time of the year.
Yeah.
But they're hard to get because the lake is so deep. I mean, you're up to 80, 90 foot, even more, off the Lough shore. And all those big feroxes are lying in there, and then they only come up every now and then.
So what would they feed on, the ferox in Melvin? Because is there coarse fish in there?
No, there's no coarse fish, and they feed on. There's supposed to be char in there, but I've never seen a char in it. But they feed on the small brown trout,
right,
close into the shore. I had in the internationals, I was boating one of the English guys and a Scottish guy, and the English guy hooked a small, wee, tiny brown trout, and next thing the line just went mad, and he got stuck into a big ferox had taken the trout.
Really?
And a real big fish, fish 6 to 12 pound size, a real big fish,
wow,
50 plus centimeters long, real big fish. And he had him on for a few minutes. The next thing he just shook his head and off he went. And we got the wee trout into the boat, and you could see clearly on it. It's not a pike bite. You know, when a pike bite takes a bait, sort of tears it. This was more like a bite mark.
Was this in the recent international?
Yeah, this was an international, only there at the beginning of June.
There was a big wind, wasn't it, if I remember right?
Oh, it was horrendous, Ceri. It was horrendous. I mean, I was surprised they stuck to the day and didn't bring it a day forward. But at least the quality of the boatmen on Lough Melvin is always of that standard that they can handle it, because we're used to fishing in fairly big winds. Because you have the mountain on the one side of Melvin and then you have the big hills on the other side.
Yeah.
It's like a channel. Then if it catches wind from the southwest or the west, it really pulls a big wave into it. We were lucky. We went across the bay, right across to underneath the mountain, and we just stuck underneath the mountain, so we got some shelter there. Because you wouldn't keep that fly line even on the water if the guys were pulling even on a fast glass. The wind was lifting the fly or the line off the water.
Do you actually fish the competitions yourself? Is the competition scene?
I used to fish the competition scene. I only got up to Ulster level. I was on the World Cup there only a week or so ago, but not anymore. I just don't have time, Ceri.
With the guiding, is it?
The guiding is very busy,
right?
Especially when the competition honors the guiding always takes over.
Yeah, I guess when the fishing's good, that's the time people want to go out. So you're guiding amongst the best time then.
Exactly. And most of the competitions is either in the spring or in around August or later in the year. And that's exactly when I have all the guests and stuff over. The Americans and the German and French guys all come over in their summer hot breaks. And you have to just cater for those guys, and that's it. You have to put the bread on the table somehow.
I know. Do you get much time for pleasure fishing?
I do. I make a point of it actually to go out at least once a week for myself. I try to get out at least a Sunday or a Saturday, and even take one of my lads with me or my wife. You see, my wife fished as well. She fished international.
Oh, did she?
Oh yeah. She represented Ireland on Grapham a few years ago. I think in 2007.
All right. Does she still competition fish now?
No. She went away from it completely. When the youngsters came along, she gave it up. But now she only comes out for the fun.
Because I remember, I think the last time we were together, we fished. I think must have been about. I was thinking this morning, about 8 years ago, I think. And we went out from Rocinva, didn't we? What's the story there? Is it a club, Rocinva Club?
Rocinva is a syndicate. So the shareholders in Rocinva, and then there's members like associate members to it, and they can get the use of the boats and the facilities up there. and that's the whole thing. And
Oh,
they have
right.
a fair bit of the water up there for themselves, like Rossington Bay, that area, which is a fly-only bit of the Melvin, because it's a big part of the Melvin boys control.
All
So
right.
the bay is well known. Well, the Rossington Bay is well known for the salmon fishing.
All right, yeah. They fish the sides and the shallows then, I guess.
The sides, the shallows, and off the points and stuff like that.
Yeah. I actually had a salmon when I fished it on the practice day for international. First time I fished it many years ago. And I was actually fishing an area, is it Ross Point? Maybe
Ross's Point, yeah.
Yeah. And I remember the boatman. It was a lovely conditions, lovely wave. And he said, this is a good spot now for the odd salmon. And I cast out and I just give one pull and I saw this salmon coming over the fly in the green Peter. And
Yeah.
£7.10, if I remember right, it was. I was shaking like a leaf. It was going all over the place. Nice fresh fish.
They give you a real good pull.
Oh yeah, I loved it. But yeah, going back.
They go off like that.
Yeah, going back to the day when we fished. One thing I remember, I think we had a few small fish, nothing of any size.
Yeah.
But one thing I did remember was lunch. You did lunch in style, didn't you? You had some. Was it deer steaks?
Venison steaks.
Venison steaks, yeah. And that's something you do in the winter. You shoot, yeah.
I hunt deer in the winter. Not that much nowadays. I used to do a lot more when I was years ago, but I do enough to keep the freezer full, and that's it. I mean, that's the one reason I have a lot of returning customers, because they always say the lunches is good.
Yeah, that's a big part.
Oh, that's it. That's all part of the crack, you see. I mean, the French, the Germans, and the Italians, they love that carry on. The Americans too, but they're more serious about their fishing. I have German customers out yesterday. We were sea trout fishing on an estuary, and they caught a sea trout, and we cooked it in the pan for them, and they loved that. But then I had some salmon steaks, and they couldn't believe how tasty the salmon is.
Oh, they were fresh salmon, wild salmon.
Wild salmon. I got a salmon a week or two ago, and in the Kong system.
Oh, did
down,
you?
In Kong itself in the village, there's the wee hole at the back,
Yeah,
next to the IFI.
Behind the hatchery.
Yeah, in there. It's behind the hatchery, exactly.
Yeah. And
I got a couple of fish out.
Did you? Did you go down there often then for the salmon?
I do. We take a house on Lough every year out of holes down in the bottom of Cahir Bay, and I go down for 10 days, and then we make a day of it and go down to Kong and fish out down there. I also fish the wee river, the Kong Canal feeder river.
Oh, yeah.
For the small browns.
Yeah.
So go down there for the day and have a bit of fun and stuff like that. So my lads can fish for the salmon as well.
Yeah.
So I've taught a bit of worming and all that.
I think I know exactly the spot you mean, actually. There's a hole just behind there, the
big
walkway.
Hole.
Yeah.
And it's full of salmon at the moment. It was absolutely stuffed.
Is it?
A friend of mine ran a GoPro underwater down it, and you wouldn't believe the amount of salmon in it. It was just, they were lying 2 and 3 next to each other, the whole place full. There was loads in it.
Yeah.
I'd say they got 200.
Well, that system from the Kong Canal, there's a dry canal, they call it, isn't it?
Yeah.
It sort of appears, then it just disappears, then it appears, disappears. It's like sinkholes. And I bet the planners had a bit of a headache making that, but it was a failure, wasn't it? They were trying to join Mask and Corrib.
It was a complete failure.
Yeah, but I think along there is hidden. It is. I think there's a place called, if I remember right, Connabonna, and basically it's like almost a little lake in that system in the woods, and you got to walk through. It's like a jungle going through to get to it. But when you get there, oh my God, it's like a forgotten lake, and it's beautiful, and it was trout feeding in there, and I had fish. I've landed them sort of 1.5 pounds from there, but I remember hooking one night, and he must have been about £5, and he came off right at the net. But it's the most unexpected places you get fish over there.
Oh, but it's a wild spot. Even if you go up the canal, towards where Lough feeds into the canal,
Yeah.
there's absolutely. If you stand on the bank and you stand still long enough, you see these big trout cruising up and down it.
Is
The
it?
problem is you need about 3 ladders to get down into it.
Oh,
But
right.
it's not very deep. It's only I'd say a foot or two deep, and it's crystal clear water. So you have to be very, very sneaky. But coming into the evening, the trout sort of forget about that they're being predated, and then it goes mad.
Is it?
I've seen great hatches of gnats and stuff in there, and the fish go absolutely crazy for them.
Yeah. It's knowing the access to these places, isn't it? Because
That's the thing. But you know what you do is you get a good map for the area, and you just spend a bit of time to drive around it and go and look at it and speak to the farmers, speak to the local anglers. A lot of places down there, the locals wouldn't want to tell you about it because they don't want you poking your nose into it.
no, quite. So how did it all
But
start for you then? Obviously,
How-
well, you haven't mentioned it now, but you're obviously from South Africa, aren't you, originally?
That's correct. That's correct. How it all started for me is, I was a little boy and age about 5 or 6, and our neighbor was the head of a local fishery hatchery, and he was running it. It was called Jonker's Hook, and he used to tie flies, and I'd watch him, little boy, and I always was mad about this creations he was making. And then a friend of our son, he was fly fishing very well at that stage, and I was about 6, sitting on the back of a Honda 500 motorbike,
Yeah.
holding on to his dear life and going up into the mountains in the Western Cape, up into the Smalblaar and the Elandspad and Yandertoys and wee mountain streams in South Africa. And that's where I learned actually fly fishing. And mostly it was all dries those days. It was all hand tied at home creations. We didn't have the trout and salmon that was during the apartheid era in the late 80s, heavily sanctioned. So you'd never see international magazines and stuff. So the only thing you had was like old magazines and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But there was a great club, and it still exists. It's called the Piscators, and they were promoting fly fishing in a big way. And that's how I actually got involved in fly fishing, because I had a good youth program. I was 12 years old, 1982, when I went to a thing they had on the Smalblaar River, and that really got the bug going. I never left it.
So what sort of fishing was there? It was mainly rivers, or was it lakes out there then?
There was mainly rivers. There was 1 or 2 small lakes compared to the Irish lakes. It was stocked,
Right.
and it was good fishing, but it was all rainbows. So you had a few ideas what to do with it, and it was more traditional flies we used to fish for them. Sweet peacock spiders, that type of stuff.
Yeah. So what actually brought you over to Ireland then?
To Ireland, well, we lived in London for a while, and I used to fish at Hanningfield. I'm sure you've heard of that.
Oh, yeah.
And then me and my wife decided, well, we wanted to move out of London, and we looked all over the place, Scotland and all over. But I had come out in 2000 to fish the mayfly with a friend of mine's father on Lough. And then we came out to Fermanagh and had a look at a few places and put in a bid for a place next to Lough, Melvin, and that was it. End of bid accepted, and I have a wee small farm out here, a wee 6-acre farm, and grow veg and live a bit off the land, and that's all I do over here.
So that was in 2000. So it was relatively recently. Well, 20 years, I guess.
Oh no, we came out 2005. We moved.
Oh,
yeah.
right.
But yeah.
And then you started guiding then, did you? Or was it
No, I didn't start guiding actually until quite a bit later on. I had friends and stuff down, and I would take them out and we'd have a big lunch and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then the next thing, a mate of mine said, "Why don't you take this on as a business? I can send you a lot of clients." And I said, "What do you mean a lot of clients?" And he said, "There's a lot of guys in England working in the finance system that's mad about fishing the Irish Lough. They'd like to come out." And that's where it all started.
Feel free to visit my online shop on my website, where you will find a selection of my most popular Irish sign prints, plus a choice of gilly kettles and cooking accessories. Or if you would like to experience one of my guiding and instruction packages, feel free to message me. Or, again, take a look at my tuition and guiding page at castingwithkerryjones.com. I think it's the drouse, isn't it? That's every year.
Yeah.
They usually get the first salmon in Ireland, don't they, normally?
They normally do, but lately the runs have become later and later. Now it's more into February. And we tend to get a big drop of kelp, spent fish, come in through the system in the first couple of weeks of January.
Yeah.
And it seems to me then after the first flood in the middle of January to the late January, then we get the first run of spring fish.
Yeah. So when does the season end up in Melvin now? Last day of September, is it?
The last day of September.
Yeah. I thought it was. Will you get out now most days with guiding or pleasure fishing? Do you have many days off now?
At the moment, this is the first day I've had off in 14 days.
Wow.
It's been pretty full on.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to be able to keep busy, mind, isn't it? Now, like I'm coming over now in September in a couple of weeks' time. What would be the best methods and flies you would say for anyone really coming over now for September?
For September, what I would put up, I mean, I'm at the moment just sitting here tying a few flies. I'll have a carrot dabbler on the point. I'll have at least one, if not two, either gorge Georges or octopuses in the middle, or a daddy on the top.
Yeah.
A wee foam body daddy, like the old pulling mills foam body daddy.
Yeah.
For some reason that pulled through the wave. That the Sonaghan love it, absolutely love it.
All right. Have you had what sort of size Sonaghan? When I fished it, I was getting them about £1 thereabouts. Do you get many bigger ones?
You do if you go to certain areas. I find that the Sonaghan that runs next to the sunken islands, they are always the bigger ones, but there's not many of them. So if you find a pod of them, and there could be maybe only 5 or 6 in the pod, you could get a couple of good fish out of it. But off the deeps in the deeper drifts of the bilberry and the schoolhouse drift, the fish all tend to be 11 and a half, maybe 12 inches is a good black Sonaghan.
I remember you saying schoolhouse. Out from schoolhouse was the prime area where we caught most of the fish, and right out into the deep. But what was nice, it's quite unique, isn't it, Melvin?
It is.
Much you haven't got to keep looking for shallows and bays and points. You can just be right out in the open. That's
it. And a lot of men, if you tell them pulling out in the deeps, especially the traditional boys, they frown at you and they don't understand how it works. But then when you've hit a couple of fish and you go around and do the drift again, and you hit another couple of fish, it works great. I mean, if you have a good boatman or you know what you're at on the engine, you can stay on the school all day long.
Do they go up and down the levels? Because what I found, we were going over and say you have a couple of fish, then you go quickly back around, have a couple of more, and whether or not we weren't finding them, but then rarely on the third time round, we'd have fish and we'd search for another pod. Do they come up and down with the layers? What's the reason for that?
What they do is if you caught a couple of fish and you put them back into the water and you release them, they go into the pod, and sometimes they take the pod down deep because what I reckon is some of them Sonaghan salt after they've been hooked and released. And they just go sit down in the deep water for a wee while, and they bring the pod with them. Depends on the light of the day, I think, as well. If it's very bright, the fish are going to stay deep all day long, but you will get them up. If there's enough surface disturbance, they'll come up. If you think there's legs on it or a bit of diarrhea in it, they will come up. They will come up. I've seen in bright sunshine and a wee corduroy ripple on it, pulling wee muddlers, size 12 muddlers through the surface on a floating line. Then wee black boys will come up and they'll hammer the fly.
Yeah. What about going on now to the Gillaroos? They are all hugging the margins, I guess, and the sides they feed in.
Oh, yeah, they're tight on the stones. Yeah. On Wednesday, I was out in the Melvin, and we were down in a place called Flanagan's Bay, and we couldn't meet to get a fish. We couldn't buy a fish, even, as they would say in Ireland. And we left it, and we went up to a place called Hills Bay, and real quiet, sheltered bay in the westerly wind. and a nice hatch of olives and mayfly coming off it. And tight on the shore, we got 4 nice, good-sized Gillaroo. And the American client wanted to know how we know they're Gillaroo, and I showed him. It's a distinctive. The fins are damaged always from hooking in the rocks. If you feel underneath the front bottom fins, you can actually feel the gizzards that they have, when you can feel the wee stones in them.
They're very orange as well. They're bright. They're more colourful.
Oh, bright orange and big red spots on them.
I've never had nothing big. Have you had any decent sized ones?
My best fish off of Lough Melvin is a Gillaroo of 4 pounds 9 ounces.
Wow! How did that come about?
Easter weekend, teaching a German client how to fly cast and just messing around off the shore.
Off the shore?
And off the shore with 2 buzzers on it over Easter weekend. And the buzzers just swang around, and we had a wee tap, and I just gave it a wee pull, and the next thing, all hell broke loose, and that was him on.
Wow. Did you get a photograph of that fish?
We've got a photograph of it, and we have, there's a video of it as well. But we were that ill prepared for the fish, we didn't even have a landing net or nothing of it. So we had to scoop it up and flick it onto the bank.
Is that the sort of a rare fish? You wouldn't get too many caught that size, no? How big do they go to?
Mostly, I mean, I've seen them. Average, I'd say, is about a pound, but you do get the odd fish, 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds. It's not uncommon to get a Gillaroo in the 2 pound size. If you concentrate on the shores, tight in on the rocks and stuff, you will meet the good ones. But they like a bit of a wind as well. They
do. They just graze in the sides. They head down, I suppose.
Graze on the side. That's it. So you have to pull them up. Yeah. And a fly with a wee touch of red always works good. Like a sooty olive and just a wee tiny band of Globe Ride number 3 in the bottom of it.
All right. So you tie your own flies as well, do you?
Oh, I do. I'm sitting actually in the studio at the moment just to restock the box after last week. Oh well, you see a lot of the clients come in and they see the flies and they want to buy a few, and I give a few away. So you finish a week, then you always look. Oh, geez, I haven't got any of those, any of these, and then you come back and tie a few. Then, of course, you're out fishing on the lake, and you get all kinds of ideas, inspirations, and then you think to yourself, well, hang on, why don't I try that or try this?
Do you know what?
That's what happened.
Yeah. One memory I've got when I fished Melvin once, and it was right out in the deep water, what I didn't expect. I was just drifting down, and then all of a sudden there was a fish leapt in front, and it was a salmon, and it must have been all of 20 pounds. And I just didn't expect it out in the middle of the lake, you know. And do you get big fish like that now?
Very rarely, and I think the problem with that is people don't fish big enough flies for the big salmon, because there's every year people see and hook up to big salmon, and very rarely are they landed because I think we just not tackled right for them. I've known of men hooking into salmon 20 plus pounds and away they go. Jump 2 or 3 times and away they go. Same in the river. Everybody's fishing size 10, wee shrimp patterns and that sort of stuff. That salmon doesn't want to even know about it. He just goes straight through all the way up into the system and away he goes.
Yeah. I think with big fish generally, I don't think you can fish too big. You know, they're not afraid of big flies, and they prefer to have something big than something small.
Exactly. I mean, there's a friend of mine. He fishes for the big trout in the drought in the deeper water, the sculpins and the bullheads and that type of flies, big woolly buggers and stuff like that. He's fishing at the moment big detached swing bodied flies, and they're all of 3-4 inches long. And almost every time he goes down, he gets caught up on a salmon, and it might not even be a big salmon.
Really? I'd love to have a go at these ferrox. Do many people fish actively for them on Melvin?
Over the years, people have tried, but I think you're out there trawling for a ferrox. You see a few trout jumping, and that's it. Down goes trawling, out comes fly rod, and that's it. Away you go. That's my biggest problem is I'd be out and I'd say to my wife, "Oh, I'm going to go and try and catch a salmon," and out with the trolling rods and go around. And about the third turn, I'll just say, "That's it. No, forget about the salmon," because salmon is a game of patience. And straight on with the fly rod and away you go. And over the years, I've looked in the logbook that I keep. I've caught more salmon on the flies in Lough Melvin than I've caught on the troll.
Have you?
I've got 14 salmon off the Melvin, and 11 of them was on the fly.
How much time do you spent on Arrow compared to Melvin?
On Arrow, this year I was 18 days on Arrow so far,
right.
Of which 15 was in the mayfly. Because what happens on Arrow is you get the first hatch of mayflies in Lough Key. And Key is a fantastic lake to fish for spent. It's an interesting lake. It's very big.
Yeah.
And you never meet much fish during the day. But as soon as the light softens and the evening comes and the spent goes out, there's always 2 or 3 fish feeding, and you'll cover one. And if you're lucky, he'll take you properly and you'll stick in him. And the smallest one I've seen come off it on the spent was 4.5 pounds, and I've seen photos of them up to 12.
12? Jesus.
Yeah, 12.
It's very picturesque lake, isn't it? With some islands and,
Oh, it's a beautiful lake. Big shallows off the points of some of those islands as well. Big shallows. And then as soon as April comes towards the end of April, the last week of April, beginning of May, I would be heading for Lough Arrow. And I'd stay on Arrow for at least 2 weeks. Until the 15th or the 16th. And if I don't have a client out on it, I'll just go for myself. Great fishing of.
Is it known really for an evening water, or is it does fish well in the day as well?
No. It can fish very well in the day. That story about it's only evening water, that's because a lot of guys go to Arrow and all they do is they fish the boiling buzzer or what they call is the green Peter at night.
Yeah.
A friend, a guy I met down there this year, he doesn't go out until 9 o'clock in the evening when most men come off it. Yeah. And he had one very good fish, about, I'd say, the guts of 5 pounds on the boiling buzzer.
That's fantastic fishing, that, isn't it?
But I go out, average about 10 o'clock in the morning, and then just look for the birds. And they don't lie. I mean, this year we found a lot of fly hatching at a place called Stony, and not a fish to be seen on it. And just drifted, kept going out into the broad lake, into the broad bay. And the next thing, we rose a fish, and then there was a whole pod of fish sitting right far out into the lake itself.
Yeah.
And had a fantastic day. Each time we went out into the deeps, we met 3 or 4 fish and got 1 or 2 each time.
On the mayfly?
On the mayfly. On the green mayfly.
So when does that start, the mayfly there? Because I know, if I remember right, Melvin is quite late, isn't it? It's still June, is it?
Melvin's very late. Melvin is normally last week in May, the first week in June. This year during the internationals, the mayfly was out, but the fish weren't even on the mayfly because we had a huge school of jellyfry, and they were very small. And the Sonaghan had actually started herding the jellyfry up, even right out in the deep. And fish you were catching in the deep was when you bring them to the boat, they were actually spewing up jellyfry.
Because on Corrib, what I normally fish, like this year, I had a great trip this year, and I caught the end of the mayfly, and that was the last week of May, first week of June. So it was more or less finishing then. And then that was the idea then. It was going to come up to Melvin. I think it was to catch the fly up there, but it wasn't to be. But hopefully the sedge fishing then, maybe the green Peter next month will be pretty good. With I'll have to get on the tying bench myself and tie a few green Peters and cock robins or something, you know.
Cock robin, the cock robin with a wee pearly ribbon, it's a very good fly.
I find it's a great point fly for me on Corrib. It's probably my favourite point fly of all. Pulled, you know. But I've gone more and more lately to fish dries. You know, I don't know what it is. I'm just fishing dries all the time now instead of pulling. And you normally get the better fish.
Oh, yes, you better believe it. I mean, I was on Mask there during the heat wave, the last one we had when England got the weather into the 40 degrees. And it was very, very warm the Saturday, the Sunday, and the Monday on Lough Mask. It was flat calm, and went out early in the morning from 6 till 8 in the morning and fishing just a very, very simple shuttlecock with a pearly ribbon in it.
Yeah.
And that's where when I met the fish and got some very good fish out of it, up to about 2.5 pounds.
That's lovely. That's nice.
I think the dry fly fishing is the cream of it.
Yeah, it's visual, isn't it? And it can be tough off a drifting boat, just going on to areas and seeing fish moving in the wind, cast into them, or even just coming blind. Have you have any goals for this year now?
Well, I'm trying to set up a trip to Los Rocos in Venezuela for beginning of next year to
Wow.
fish for tarpon, permit, and bonefish, and maybe get out at the tuna as well, because I love fly fishing for yellowfin tuna, especially the smaller ones.
You've done that before, have you?
I've done that quite a bit of it. I have the gear for it as well, the very big, strong dragged fly reels and 14 weight rods for that. But that's a goal for this year. But I'm not sure if travel restrictions and planning will happen for it. But fingers crossed.
Do you do any saltwater fishing in Ireland?
I do a bit. I like fly fishing for pollock up in Donegal.
Oh, I'd love to do that. I've done it in West Wales once. Blinking heck. Did they pull or what?
I can tell you one thing. I've seen some of the best 10-weight rods snap underneath a big pollock.
I can imagine. Is that off the boat then, off the shore in the rocks?
No, there's a few marks we have up Donegal Bay area itself, and you're fishing off cliffs into deep water. You're fishing into 7 meters of water on low tide, and the pollock just school up in these holes, and you fish a high density line with a big clouser or a big streamer straight out to them on a sinking line, and as the line goes down, normally on a figure of 8, slow retrieve, bang, and there's no messing. It's a solid hook up, and that's it.
Yeah, you don't give them line, do you?
Oh, you can't, because you're in really bad, rough terrain.
Yeah. I forgot about pollock. I remember a few years ago I went with a guy, Vaughan Thomas, down West Wales, and he had a little dinghy. Yeah. And we were fishing in amongst these rocks and kelp. And as soon as the fish would take, even the 1.5 pound fish, it was like, God, you are just at the lock up and just hold it. And he had one about 5.5 pound. And I thought his rod was going to break. It was just... but it's
a hang-on, Matt.
Yeah, that's something I'd want to do maybe. Well, I got quite a few things planned now next month. I want to do, not just stick to one place. I want to do a lot of travelling. I want to fish down in Ceri as well. Maybe try on Carran for the sea trout.
Yeah, Carran for the sea trout.
Yeah, and then...
I've never fished it, but apparently it's fantastic.
Oh, I fished a few times. I've done really well. I've always had fish there. Nothing big. I've always had sort of the 1 pound to 1.5 pound fish, plenty of them. I've met big fish, but they didn't stick. Usual story, but it's a nice place, and it's straight in off the sea. You know, the fresh fish, and it is special. Right. And the bass fishing, I want to try again. There's a guy, James Barry. He's from Waterford way, and he fishes the Copper Coast, and I want to try and get a day with him fishing along the Copper Coast. So I'll be looking forward to that as well for the bass. I do some bass fishing here as well, but it hasn't been great this year so far for me. But I'm going for the first time tonight now. I'm going to fish for sea trout tonight on one of the rivers down South Wales here. Because we've had plenty of rain the last day or so. Well, not plenty, but enough to get some fresh fish, because our lakes and rivers here are just on their knees, on their bones, you know. There's no water here at all.
Well, we've had, I'll be honest with you, we've had 3, maybe 4 good summer days. I mean, last night I came off the estuary and I was founded. It was 11 degrees at midday outside, and the wind was coming northwest, and it was ice cold, and we had spots of rain and stuff like that. And I was out with the oilskins and the whole lot, and I was still cold. It was freezing, Baltic, and we've had a few local rivers in spate over the last week as well, so we have had plenty of rain. There's a lot of water everywhere.
Well, I've enjoyed this chat. You've been to many places, by the sounds of it, in your lifetime. International places as well as Ireland. But where would you want to be to make your last cast?
To be honest, I'll tell you exactly where that'll be, and that is the Upper Y or the Upper 7, fishing in April for the Granham Hatch for grayling.
Wow, well, I didn't expect that.
Yeah, you didn't expect that? No. I used to go up there once a year in April and May, and the Upper 7 and Upper Y had a huge hatch of Granham sedges, and they used to have a very distinctive green button. And I remember it well. There's a pub called the Red Lion on the way to Ryder on the right hand side, and there's a bridge just next to the pub, and underneath the bridge there could be a school of maybe 40 grayling sitting, and you could just pop the wee cling camel with the wee green butt down there, and whoop, up the grayling would come and take it. And you land him, and you put another one out, another fly out, and whoop, up you come and take one down. And I caught my best grayling at the back of the football pitches in Ryder in the Upper 7, and he was 4 pounds 2 ounces, and he was as long as my bloody arm, and he was as fat as a pig. And I was always loved going to the 7 and the Y to fish for the grayling.
And I thought you were going to say on a summer's evening in Lough or something, or South Africa. Well, many thanks for the chat. Enjoyed chatting eventually. I'll speak to you soon, Andreas, and see if you can dig up one or two of those venison steaks too.
Don't worry, the season's opened already. My freezers are full, and I don't need to shoot anything yet, but I'll get there soon enough. Chat to you later.
If you've enjoyed this podcast and want to listen to more, please consider becoming a Patreon, where you will get over 90 past episodes and weekly podcasts, plus photography and exclusive content. To join, visit patreon.com/casting with Kerry Jones, or see the link on my website, castingwithkerryjones.com. Well, that's all for now. Tight lines and don't strike too soon.